All right, we have 5 questions for the sleep detectives to answer today. So these are the questions that you have sent in, your burning baby sleep questions that we are going to shoot from the hip and answer.
Yes, thank you so much for sending all these questions in. They're always nice to receive as well. First question we're going to tackle is 2-year-old suddenly fighting bedtime and waking up 3 a.m. upset, sometimes skips naps in the day.
Well, one of my first questions is when we say 2, are we talking, did the baby just turn, or I should say toddler, they're always our baby.
Oh, yeah, toddler.
Did the toddler just turn 2 yesterday, or are they a 2-year-old, 2 years, 10 months, or, turning 3 in a week? Because then they're 2 very different 2-year-olds in terms of sleep needs and the nap refusal. So that's my first question. We don't have that information.
No, we don't.
Where would you go with this one, Bec?
Look, I think, like you said, the response is going to be different depending on what kind of 2-year-old they are. If it was a fresh 2-year-old fighting bedtime, waking upset and skipping naps, then I would be saying you're right in the midst of the 2-year regression, which is nap refusal, can't get my words out, in which case it would just be a case of let's just knuckle in and making sure that even if they're not sleeping for the nap, that they're going into the room at the same time each day for at least an hour to keep that melatonin pumping at the right time. So if that nap is, even though it's not happening, that melatonin is still pumping, which means that once the regression is ended, that nap is going to come back and be totally fine, and our little ones are sleeping a good 1.5 to 2 hours hunky-dory. If our little ones are not napping through the day, then that 3 a.m. wake is by and by of the overtiredness, I would imagine. So just being a little bit overcooked going to bed, and then at 3 o'clock, they're finding it really tricky to navigate going back off to sleep. And I would also, just being this time of year, just double check how warm they are. I mean, sometimes it's just as easy as just sort of adding that extra layer on, or double checking the TOG rating of the bag, just making sure that that's not the underlying cause. But yeah, 3 a.m. waking, if there's no nap with a fresh 2-year-old, I would be using a technique to get them back off to sleep. But also just with an older 2-year-old, not napping, I would say that that's sort of, you're probably nearing the end of your wonderful time with the naps.
Oh, it's so sad when the nap has to go.
I know. So there is a mourning period with that.
I feel the grief
and then
for
maybe
them.
Then it's maybe a case of sort of, if they're not napping through the day and it's time to give it away, then adjusting bedtime just to make sure that they're not going down overtired. Yeah, so bringing it forward. So a lot of little ones who are transitioning out of a nap are going to need a bedtime of somewhere between 6 and 6:30. So you're not sort of aiming for your 7 o'clock at that point in time, because it's a long stretch, and so you don't want to be over jazzing it.
I've got 2 other thoughts just to add on to that. Is that if this baby is a fresh 2-year-old, sometimes I find schedules that I see online are actually asking for really long wake windows before bed because they're on one nap. And I often find that a fresh 2-year-old, a 4.5-hour wake window is their max threshold. So rather than stretching to 5.5, which might get you to what you feel like is an appropriate bedtime on the clock, is in fact overreaching a little bit, and then we get overtiredness, which could be causing that 3 a.m. wake. And if there is a battle at bedtime, could they just be on a second wind and overtired? So having a look at that wake window from the end of the nap. The other thing that I'll say is that when the nap refusal is happening, so let's talk about it as if it is the 2-year regression, as you mentioned, Bec, is that sometimes I will actually give parents a bit of a circuit breaker plan. So, okay, the nap is miserable for everyone at home and in the cot. Let's reset a little bit, get the bedtime and 3 a.m. situation sorted. And while we do that, go for a drive, something where you know your toddler is likely to fall asleep at roughly their nap time. See if you can get something in the tank. It doesn't have to be the full 2-hour nap that, maybe you were experiencing in the cot in weeks and months gone by, but we just get a little bit of a sleep pressure release. We get them better rested to go into bedtime, maybe to double down on some sleep training or settling them to minimize the battle and just reset. Because if they were a previously great sleeper, their skill set is still there
Yeah.
regardless of the regression. But the regression can just, everyone gets a bit heightened and it all gets a bit muddied. So we reset during the day. You get the nap in the car, in the pram, whatever it is. And then you focus on bedtime and overnight. And when that feels better, or just even a couple of days, then we start working back to getting a nice cot nap in, or as you said, sort of just cot time to reset and then let it all sort of fall into place.
That's right.
So that's what
So
I'd
for a
also
little
add.
one that is, a little one that is sleep trained and does typically sleep really well, when you're dealing with the 3 a.m. waking, it's about response. So, having a really clear set response of, I am going to come back, but encouraging them to still do the work to take themselves back off to sleep. So it is tricky at this age because they have longevity and stamina, and they have beautiful, nice, big, powerful lungs. So very, very
Yes,
tricky.
and as someone actually said to us in Snooze Social this week, Bec, is that the difference between this and, let's say, when they first went through a regression at, let's say, 9 months, for example, is that the vocab also starts to come into the mix. Not only calling out mummy, and, of course, like that tugs on our heartstrings when we're maybe trying to say, no, you're okay. I know that you can do this without me settling you off to sleep. But they also can be a bit more creative in, I need water. I think they were mentioning, I need a drink. I've done a wee in my nappy. All of these things where we're like, oh yeah, maybe these are causes. So it definitely does make it it's a different playing field than with a baby that is not articulate.
Yeah, 100%. That's what makes it very tricky.
All right, next question. What have you got for me?
The next question I have got, this mother has said crying for the duration of the 9:30 a.m. nap, age 13 months. This one seems to be an easy fix for me, like not to
We're changing the nap timing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, not to downplay it, but if at 13 months, I would be doing a 10 to 10:30 nap and a 1 till 3 second sleep. So I feel like perhaps this is just a sleep pressure issue and your little one is not ready for a 9:30 nap. So extra time, mucking around, playing, running the energy out, and then try again at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Definitely. I also think when we move to that more transitional schedule where we're looking at a short, long, which is sort of future proofing for the inevitable 2-to-1 nap drop, although not yet, not at 13 months. That is not what I'm suggesting here. But sometimes by asking it to be this beautiful self-settling cot nap, if your baby can do that, fantastic. But sometimes you can take the pressure off and say, okay, well, we're going to walk the dog and get a chino after, and they can fall asleep in the pram 10 till 10:30, and they haven't had to do the work themselves as we are looking at transitioning away from 2 naps and just playing around with sleep pressure a little bit. So you can use other sleep associations. Now that second nap would still be, okay, we are coming home, we are protecting this in your cot. Everyone needs a nice rest throughout the day, parents and babies alike. But that first one, if it's a battle, you can let the rules go a little bit because we're not keeping it forever.
Yeah, and also because you know that your little one can self-settle. So when you know your little one can self-settle, you don't necessarily always have to have that nap in the cot. It can be out and about.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. Yep. Just do things easy to try and keep those 2 naps in the mix for as long as you can.
Yeah. We're big on picking our battles here.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
All right.
Cool. What have you got for us,
I've got
Sally?
one. Okay. Can room sharing after the 4-month sleep regression cause more interrupted sleep for baby? I moved both of my babies, and I know, Red Nose, I remember I chatted to my GP at the time, particularly when I was a first-time mother. I actually moved my babies into their own room, both when they were 4 months old, because I lay awake hearing every snuffle and squeak and thumb suck, and they were sleeping 12 hours by that time, but I was not. So I actually moved them into their own rooms because at that age, because, well, it was more for me rather than they were having disrupted sleep. But babies are noisy sleepers. And even though I like to think I don't snore, that I'm just this angel lying there pristinely all night long, tucked in, We wake each other up. So
Yeah.
I think part of me thinks I wouldn't necessarily lump it in with the sleep regression, although what I would say is that with the 4 month sleep regression, babies are rousing between overnight sleep cycles more. And when we start to come out of a sleep cycle, our spidey senses do kick back in. So they may be hearing us if we're creeping off to the toilet and we think we're being really quiet, or, someone's coming to bed at 11 p.m. And,
Yeah.
it is hard to share a room. So maybe they are hearing you, or maybe in the early hours of the morning. But what I would probably more commonly put it down to is just as a baby gets older, their awareness increases. And so, yes, I see it all the time that we wake each other up, even when we're trying to be really quiet.
And we're intrinsically linked to each other's sleep cycles when we're room sharing.
Mm.
So it just means that we are waking seconds before baby's waking seconds before we're waking. We're just all about and up each other's grills. It's one of those things where sometimes there can be a degree of separation can improve the sleep overnight. So I'm a little bit like you, Sally, in terms of my little ones moved into their rooms quite early, except that they actually never spent a night in my room. They were in their
Oh, you went
rooms from
straight.
day dot. Yeah.
Yep.
I think maybe my daughter had one night with me, just as the last. I just knew that she was going to be the last at that point, and she had one night, and I was like, no, you're in, what we did with the boys.
It gets
But
easier with each subsequent child, doesn't
yeah.
it?
But it was one of those things I just could. I feel like I'm a deep sleeper, but I could hear everything that was going on. And interestingly, I could hear everything. I didn't have monitors or anything like that for the kids in their rooms when they were babies, but I could hear a pin drop in their room. Like your senses, like you were saying, you've got spidey senses. So so I feel like for a lot of families, they're wanting their little ones to sleeping better before they move their children out into their own rooms. And sometimes it's a case of it can actually often get better just by doing that one thing alone. Because we're
We can
intrinsically
kind of
linked.
create this perfect sleep environment too, right? We're talking temperature. You don't have to worry about the ensuite light being turned on or someone's alarm going on, even if it's under the pillow and
Oh
as muffled
yeah. Oh
as
yes.
possible.
Oh my
So
God,
you
yeah.
can kind of create this perfect den. But not only that, sometimes what I notice is that it can be easy to over respond. So we all wake multiple times overnight between sleep cycles. We probably roll over, check us around. We don't even know that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so when you are room sharing and a baby is noisy between sleep
Yep.
cycles, maybe even has a bit of a cry, it can be very easy to, and responding to our babies is never a problem.
Yeah.
What can cause ongoing overnight issues is that the moment we hear them, because they are right next to us or at the end of our bed, we can just go and pop that dummy back in. We can pat, we can maybe do an extra feed, and we sort of preempt them being able to just go back to sleep, and we add something into the mix. And so I was like you, with my first baby, I did not have a monitor. And so when she was in her own room, I could always hear her if she needed me, but the snuffles and squeaks where I might have woken and thought, oh, I should intervene, I didn't hear. And so she put herself back to sleep every time, and then I heard her when she needed me. So sometimes what I will also say to a parent is that if you're looking to make some active change or just test the waters, you can even move out. So all of this comes with, we know that the Red Nose guidelines suggest to room share for the first 6 to 12 months. But if you are looking to make change, you can also, camp out for a couple of nights. So drag the mattress out into the living room, the fold-out couch. Maybe you sleep in the baby's nursery. They stay in your room, and just make the change without being right next to them. See what impact it does or doesn't have, and you can always look to return. 9 times out of 10, when I have families do that, they're like, oh my goodness, they slept so much better and so did we. And so they make the informed decision that they are ready, regardless of the age. Sometimes it's older babies, that they are ready to put their baby into their own room. But yes, that was a very long way of us saying that, yes, definitely sometimes being in the room together can cause more unsettled moments overnight. So I hope that answers that question. Do you have anything else to add before we go to the next one?
No, I think we have more than covered that one.
Okay, great. All right, this one, 10-month-old. I actually really like this question. Follow wake windows or stick more with a schedule for naps and sleep? I know my answer.
Yeah, same. See, I roll in both camps for this
Mm,
one because I do have like I do start my day off like if our little ones aren't awake by 7, then they're up for the day, and
mm,
then the first nap is anchored in at 9:30. So that is structured. So I don't
yep. And
necessarily
remember, this is
change
10
that.
months old for anyone listening.
Yeah, 10 months old.
Mm,
But then I will use a wake window if they're not sleeping for perhaps our suggested length of time for nap one. So if our little one is on a 9:30 to 11 nap one and then 2 to 3:30 for nap two, then if they're only sleeping for 1 hour in the morning and they wake at
mm,
10:30, I will use my wake window then of 3 hours to get them to nap two. So that's when it becomes more of a wake window based afternoon rather than a structured, oh, bugger it, they've woken at 10:30, I'm still going to put my little one down at 2. And the reason
mm,
for that is mainly because I'm always trying to avoid an overtired little one.
mhm.
And if I, sometimes it works and it's totally fine. But in a lot of cases, if we stretch little one to 2 o'clock for their normal nap time, the chances are is that they're a little bit overtired, and then that might equate to a short nap. In which case, we've got an earlier bedtime and so forth. So I use a wake window to make sure that my little ones are well rested going into nap two, so that then
Mm.
they've got maximum opportunity to have a longer second sleep and then go into bedtime at a roughly normal time.
Yeah, I think
That was long-winded.
no, I'm with you. I am pretty much exactly the same. I think it's important to remember that we talk all the time about clock-based schedules. Babies going into their cot
Yep.
at 9:30, babies going into their cot at whatever it is. Um, those are dictated by wake windows. So I, over the years of doing this, I have sometimes found that we can be a bit damned if we do, damned if we don't, if a baby
Mm.
takes a very short nap. So, for example, in your example, the baby slept for an hour out of the hour and a half, 2 hours, let's say.
Yep.
Sometimes when I first meet a family, these babies are taking like 3 20-minute naps.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Hmm.
we need to find a sort of this sweet spot, because if we purely worked off wake windows, we're going to have multiple micro naps and we're not
Yeah,
going to
true.
break out of the cycle. And over the years, I've sort of realized there will always be a degree of like sometimes we do need to push
Mm.
through, or maybe I'll say we'll just use the blanket rule of like 15 minutes earlier. Sometimes I do split the difference. Okay, baby's owing us an hour. We cut that in half, which is 30 minutes. So we'll just bring it forward by 30. But there's a lot of mental gymnastics there. That's where,
Yeah.
where you'd want a sleep consultant doing those mental gymnastics. I did not make
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
family do them. So I it's a good question for me because I do probably err on the side of the clock-based schedule if we're talking really rubbish naps, and we may have to do
Right.
some stretching or some rescuing of naps. But if it's a relatively good nap, but just not quite, it just misses the mark by, as you said, 30 minutes, then yeah, I would be using the full wake window to gauge the next one so that we keep the feeds. I'd still be anchoring everything else in sort of around that and then using the wake window to amend the day. Does that make
I
sense? Or
think it
was that just
depends
mental
on.
gymnastics trying to listen to me?
No, that was. I'm sure there will be many people going, "What the?" But it does make absolute sense. Like it's all in context. I think that it's probably for us. It really varies in the degree of sleep challenge that we're trying to fix.
Mm,
So, like if we've got a really hectic case that, there is a little one that can only sleep for 20 minutes twice a day, there's going to be different measures that we put in place, like you said, like to
mm.
try and rectify all of that. But if it's just a standard, my baby's finished his nap 15 minutes earlier, then you kind of just sort of go, okay, well, everything gets pulled back by 15
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Um,
I think
yeah,
hectic case is the perfect description because that's probably where my head goes, because that's who we work with. Not all the
yeah,
time, but we work with a lot of hectic cases. So there is other options. But I've probably gone too deep as a sleep consultant. The general answer would be use your wake window.
Oh, I don't
I
want
have
you to.
created more questions than answers.
No, see, it makes total sense for me. Total sense for me.
Okay, good.
Listeners playing along might just have to re-listen to that in a little bit more, like maybe like slow it down,
Slow it
like a couple.
down.
Yeah, so yeah.
I was going Gilmore Girls
Yeah.
speed. Because do you know what it is also? We will get those messages. Like if we're doing a 2-week package, we will get the message in real time to say,
Yeah.
oh, golly, baby's awake after 20 minutes. What do I do? And so I have to think as fast as that, like, okay, do we
Yeah. Yes,
and create a plan on the spot.
because the answer isn't necessarily in what you're doing in that moment because you have to be 10 steps ahead for later on down the track. So that's where the calculations come in. And that's why we do that for you because we're doing
Yeah. Yeah.
like the compute.
Yeah, because I want to
Yeah,
protect your feed. I don't want to add in
yes,
that.
we are thinking about 3,000 things going on as well to
Yeah.
make sure that it all stays on track. So yeah, that's why that happens.
But if it just fell a bit short, just use a wake window, keep your
Yes.
feet anchored at the same time. And yeah, maybe
Yeah.
bedtime will end up being a bit earlier, but such is life. Start again tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The inner workings of a sleep consultant. You just got insight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I guess this question, it's the same aged baby, so 10-month-old, and it's kind of the same thing because I can tell in these situations, parents are trying to do some mental gymnastics. So let's see if we can help. This 10-month-old baby is not napping well at daycare. So overtired. Do we reintroduce the third nap to help? So I think the first thing is I would want to know what time is childcare trying to get these naps in. So at 10 months old, we're coming back and we have an episode on this. So if you're like, why do they keep going on about this 9:30 nap? We have an episode all about the importance of a 9:30 nap for a baby up until 12 months on 2 naps. Okay, so that's what we're referring to. We would be anchoring that in. So I would be making sure that for that first nap at childcare, you're asking that it's not earlier than 9:30 for the exact reason, Bec, that you just said in that last answer, which is even if it is a bit, excuse my language, your whole day's not thrown out too much because you would then use your full wake window and you get to a nap that, it's a bit early but it's not crazy and we're not stretching the whole day too far. So that's what I would say. Make sure that first nap is not happening before 9:30 with childcare.
Yep.
And then using a full wake window for nap 2.
Yep.
I would not be
and then adjusting your bedtime.
Yeah, adjusting. I personally wouldn't be bringing in a third nap. I think that's going to be more trouble than
it perpetuates the
worth.
issue, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reinforces it. I have a older baby, but I remember both of my babies were at childcare and they both had FOMO. They lived for childcare. They're very social, active little poppets. And nap 2 was starting to be refused. And so I was left with this ridiculously long wake window before bed. So they would have napped, let's say, at 10 for 30 to 40 minutes. And then, oh gosh, how on earth am I going to rectify the day with no second nap under our belt? And I used to bring bedtime early to 5:30. I can't remember if I've said this on the podcast, so excuse me if I have before, but I used to put them to bed at 5:30 p.m. And particularly in the height of summer, I would walk out from there like pitch black, crack den vibes in their room and walk out and it would still be, daylight savings, broad daylight. And I think, what am I doing? Yeah. And it worked 99% of the time that I wouldn't hear from them and, until 6 to 7 a.m. because I mitigated to the best of my ability an overtired stretch to bedtime, overnight wakings, early rising. Now, 5:30 does not have to be the answer for every family. I was a bit of a cowboy. It worked for us. If the naps are really shocking, I would be saying, okay, we need to bring dinner time early. We have to reverse engineer and bring everything forward. Yeah. And I'd be looking at probably getting this 10-month-old baby into bed between 6 and 6:15 p.m. As your rescue plan. If despite even that first nap at 9:30, if it's been 2 really short naps, then we're looking at an early bed to try and minimize the overtired meltdown.
A lot of families then will try and crunch everything into, 5 to 6. They're getting home from 5 o'clock from childcare after the pickup, and they're thinking, gosh, if I'm trying to get my little one into bed at 6 o'clock, like that's just, it's unreasonable. I'm not going to be able to do that. It's really tricky. So if you're finding that it's happening regularly, then you need to talk to childcare and just double check the timings that they're offering your little one their naps. If there's nothing that can sort of be done with it, then at least maybe if they're not being picked up until, say, 5 o'clock, you're running out of time at the other end of the day, pack them another snack or dinner or something that childcare can feed them before you pick them up, so that at least that's one less job to try and fit in. And then it just means that there's been that appetite, there's space between the dinner time and that final milk feed, so that at least they've got a really nice full tummy to go down with. And then at least you can do your really good stretches overnight if you're up to that point.
If it is an ongoing issue, I mentioned a circuit breaker, I think, in one of the first couple of questions. Sometimes we need to just hit pause and catch up on some sleep debt and just reset the body clock a little bit. So if you have home days, let's say baby goes to childcare Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from Thursday until they go back to childcare, I would be doubling down at home to get these naps in. Now, if they need to be fully assisted for the first day or so, and then we trying to get back into some nice cot naps, just to catch up on some sleep debt. So build up their sleep total so that, yes, things may deteriorate a little bit at childcare. Very few babies smash out these huge long naps at childcare as well as they do at home. So you're going into the week of childcare better rested already. Yeah. But sometimes a baby just gets all a bit discombobulated. Naps are happening at different times. It's short, it's choppy, overtiredness. So you can actually assist them and remind their body clock, okay, we're going to release melatonin now. We are going to get sleepy now. We are going to get hungry now. This is what happens at bedtime and overnight. Long weekend. We've got one coming up as we're recording this. Yeah. Perfect timing. I would never feel comfortable asking parents to take time off work. There's also part of me that as a mother, I'm like, I know that feeling and I'd want to get on top of it. And so if it needs to be prioritized, it needs to be prioritized so everyone can just take a breath, get on the schedule, catch up on some sleep, and then go back into childcare.
Yeah, I think that just having, an opportunity to have those consecutive days can make a big difference for your little one. So if there is an opportunity, like just use this weekend, like if you can, to do a little bit of a reset, get those naps happening at the right times, use your internal clock, so that then you can then give that schedule to daycare and then say, hey, we've worked really hard on this. Can you do naps at 9:30 and 1:30 and see how we go and whatnot? And then hopefully it makes a bit of a difference, or you're getting closer to the goal. Yeah. Childcare's hard.
Childcare's really hard. Yeah. And yes, rather than the third nap, I'd be doing an early bed.
Yep.
Personally.
I'm the same.
Excellent.
Personally.
All right. I think that is our 5 sleep detective questions for today. There's actually been quite a few that I've just skimmed over that are going to warrant their own whole main podcast episode. So sickness and
really
sleep,
great ones.
Jet lag and travel and sleep,
teething.
Some of the teething and sleep. Yes. Yeah. So if you don't hear your question, don't panic. Chances are we just have more to say. Then
that's right.
This sort of more, we say rapid fire, and I don't even know how long we've been recording, but I think it's not in our 15-minute goal. But yeah, there's been some great whole episode topics that have come out of your questions, so stay tuned. We will cover them for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to covering those. That'll be really good. Excellent. Well done.
All right. Well, that was Sleep Detectives. I hope it all makes sense. You can go back and listen to me on slow-mo. And if you're sick of doing the mental gymnastics, you know where to find us and we can do the thinking for you.
Yeah, let us do the work for you. Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Well, who's Sherlock in this?
You're Sherlock. And I'm Moriarty. Moriarty.
Moriarty, yes. If anyone doesn't know, Bec's last name is Maher. So, all right, you're the baddie.
That's not a detective.
All right, we will see you in the next episode of Nap Trapped. This has been Sleep Detectives. Bye.
See ya. Bye.